Hello friends! There are many incredible brushes that come pre-installed with Procreate, and we're going to explore some of them. In this video, I'm going to test the Moorilla brush. Okay, to find this brush, you're going to head to the brush library, go to the drawing section, and towards the bottom you'll find Moorilla. As always, I am using the brush exactly as it was installed. I'm not making any changes in the brush studio. This time around, my canvas is set to 4,000 pixels wide by 3,200 pixels tall, so it's slightly horizontal. And we're first going to take a look at the brush behaviors. Okay, I'm going to start with a test stroke at the smallest size. And by the way, I always mention my canvas size because the size of your test strokes might shift depending on the size of your canvas. Now this brush does get pretty large, so I'm going to do the last two strokes on a new layer. At the smallest size, the stroke is pretty smooth. Then you start to see more texture as the size increases. Then it gets really grainy and heavily textured at these larger sizes. And you can also see how it kind of creates a bit of a halftone effect. You can see it in these areas. You can see it a little bit here too. I also notice that there's some color shifting with this brush. Do you see when I move the brush back and forth, sometimes there's yellow coming through, sometimes it's a little bit more green. I'll show you again. So you see how there's areas of a lighter, more yellow-green, then there's a more vibrant green. And I haven't changed my swatch color. So the brush itself is creating some of these different tones, which is interesting. I mean, it might be a cool effect or it might be very annoying. We'll see what happens. In the preview image for this brush, it looks like it has a taper, but it's not a huge taper, but it is definitely pressure sensitive because you can see how there's a change in value with light pressure. The color is quite light, and as I increased the pressure, the color darkened. Now let's test the opacity. I'm going to put down a few overlapping swatches to see how transparent it is. And it is semi-transparent. I guess it depends on the amount of pressure because you can see here, this area covered completely. It looks like really solid coverage, but here it's so much lighter. So the transparency definitely depends on the amount of pressure used. Because as you can see here, I'm applying really light pressure, whereas with much more pressure, it gives you complete coverage. So there's actually quite a huge range in transparency with this brush. And that suggests to me that pencil grip will make a difference. So I'm going to try a really nice loose grip using the side of the pencil. And yes, it's definitely much more transparent by comparison with a regular grip. You've got more solid coverage. And here you can really see that kind of halftone texture and the color shifting. So I didn't change colors, but you're seeing both the coral and this kind of orange colors coming through. I'm going to switch over to the smudge tool in the same brush and see how that looks. You can get some decent texture with just one stroke. Of course it does, if you go back and forth with your strokes, it will definitely diffuse everything and soften it up. But just one or two strokes will give you this interesting texture that kind of blends out. Not really sure how I would use that, but that's an interesting effect. Let's see if it will blend from color to color. It does blend the colors a little bit from yellow to a little bit of an orange tone before we get to this coral. So there may be some good uses for the smudge tool. We'll see. Okay, let's see how this brush performs with an actual drawing. I'm going to actually do my sketch with this brush, so I'm going to drop my size down quite a bit. And I'm going to sketch a couple of pairs. This is kind of reminding me of sketching with the gloaming brush, although it's not quite as soft and smooth as gloaming, but it definitely feels close to that. Okay, I've got my sketch done and I'm going to start laying down the first color. You can already see the changes in value when the pressure shifts and it changes the transparency. I want that green to transition to yellow in some areas. But that green showing through is making this look a little muddy. So I'm going to add a few more layers of the yellow to make it more opaque. Now this is more yellow than I intended to add, but I'm going to make it work. These textured edges look great, but they can be kind of annoying sometimes when you want a cleaner edge. It's just a matter of changing the size of the brush constantly to get the look you're going for. Now let's see if I can layer on this more orangey color. Now I want to blend these colors so that it's not such a sharp transition from one to the next, but I don't think I'm going to use the smudge tool because it's going to smooth out all that really nice texture. So I'm going to change my grip and just add the yellow over that orange. But with this grip, it's just going to be a really light transparent wash, and that should help me blend one color into the next, or at least soften that transition from one to the next. This really worked with, I think it was the Eagle Hawk brush that I tried this technique with before, and it really worked then, so I'm hoping it will do something similar here. I think I've added more yellow than I really want, so I'm going to go back to that orange and just kind of blend that up into the yellow. I'm going in with a darker green here where the two pairs overlap. And again, I'll use a really light transparent layer to soften that transition in color. Just adding a little bit more pressure here so I can get some of that texture. I think this one could use a tiny bit of orange, not too much. I'm using the edge of the pencil again here to make that bright color a little more subtle. Now I've got the brush back down to a really small size so I can get these details on the stems. In some ways, this brush is a little bit tricky to control because I'd prefer to fill these leaves at a larger size to avoid that kind of streaky effect that happens because of the transparency. But at a large size, you know, that's so textured that it's a little bit tricky to kind of keep it in check. Now, on the flip side, the great thing about this brush having such a wide range of sizes is that you can go down to a really small size to add detailed line work. I want to add some highlights, but I want them to be subtle, so I'm going to just use really light pressure so that I can get that really transparent look. I think that's working. All right, I'm going to do the same here as well. And a little bit on the leaves. And since this brush is so textured and it can get so large, I think it would work well for adding some background texture. But with light pressure, it will be transparent. I don't love that overlap. So I think I need to just keep my pencil down the entire time to avoid that overlapping, which is tricky because when you keep your pencil down the entire time, you can very easily overwork some areas and lose the texture. I'm just going to go in with a slightly darker color and add a little bit of shadow. And for the final detail, I've got the brush down to its smallest size so I can add a few tiny little spots. Final thoughts on this brush. This felt like a combination of a few different brushes I've tried so far. At a small size, it works pretty well as a sketching brush, similar to gloaming. The painterly feel and shifts in opacity reminds me a little bit of the Eagle Hawk brush. And then that really grainy texture at the large size feels somewhat like the Freycinet brush. Once you get used to adjusting the brush size to control the amount of texture, it's a pretty intuitive brush and I found it easy to use. What do you think of this brush? Have you tried it before? Let me know in the comments. You know I love chatting with you guys. If you'd like to see more from this brush review series, there's a link to the playlist in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.